In the house. I can always rely on Andrew to come on Good Morning NFC East with me every single day if I wanted him to. Andrew, how you feeling, my man?
Hey, Jeff. How you doing, man?
You know what, Andrew? I'm getting ready for the holidays, right? It's a busy time of year for everybody at this stage. I'm sure you're busy too with Birds content. By the way, I do have to ask: is
Sure.
it weird to have games on Saturday?
Little bit. I'm not quite ready for it yet. It takes a little bit of an adjustment, but I guess we're at that point in the season, man.
Yeah, it feels like a Friday, doesn't it? Even though it's Thursday.
It doesn't feel like a holiday week, to be honest with you.
No, go back to this, right? So Christmas is Sunday. I forgot there was football on because I think the games are so bad.
Yeah, that's been the sort of the theme of this season by and large.
Yeah, if you look, I mean, you got Philadelphia at 13-1, right? So after that, it's what? Maybe we can go Cincinnati, Buffalo. Like, how would you rank your top five right now?
I think the Eagles are the class of the NFL right now, but then I think you can make a case for the Cincinnati Bengals or the Buffalo Bills. Then you got the Chiefs there, and then I don't know how you can. There's no definitive list after that, but I think that you have a clear-cut top four, and then after that, it's up for debate.
So if you're looking at everybody here in the NFL, and we only mentioned four teams that have a legit shot at probably winning the Super Bowl. Don't you think this is probably the Eagles' best chance to win a Super Bowl ever?
Absolutely. There's a clear path to the Super Bowl for the Eagles, and that's going to, for all intents and purposes, going to go through the Lincoln Financial Field. I don't see anybody coming into the Lincoln beating the Eagles, but now health becomes paramount. That's the one hiccup that could sort of deter their path here.
What's the one injury do you think the Eagles can't sustain outside Jalen Hurts?
I would say Lane Johnson. Lane Johnson's a massive loss when you look at it. What did he have, like 928 consecutive snaps without giving up a sack or something? That's unheard of. And the Eagles really, that may never be accomplished ever again. So I think we're witnessing greatness, and knowing how pivotal he is to the offense, I don't think you could stand to lose Lane and then kind of continue on without missing a beat.
When you look at the entire Eagles offense, I did this the first segment of the show. If Dallas Goedert doesn't get hurt, you do realize the entire offense, the entire starting 11 is either selected to the Pro Bowl or a Pro Bowl alternate.
Yes. When you look at it, there's 17 total that were qualifiers even in this. When you look at that, that's pretty impressive. Eight were selected for the game, 9 alternates. That's impressive. And it should be. The Eagles are the best team in football.
When you look at the league, though, like even all the stuff, James Bradberry, Javon Hargrave, you could say TJ Edwards. Don't you feel like the league might have said, you know what, we just can't take everybody on this team?
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the 2004 season when you saw all those different Eagles go in. I just think that at some point they're like, listen, we can't have half the roster comprised of Eagles players just to try and shake it up a little bit. But I think the NFL and their peers, they all know the Eagles have you want to have a solid representation from the best team in football. I just think that they had to put a cap on it.
Was Micah Parsons right
about
the system? Like it might actually be, hey, you know what? The Eagles, in a way, it was kind of a backhanded compliment while shooting Jalen Hurts. Like, okay, the Eagles are really good. It ain't just him.
Right, exactly. So in a way, I guess you could say he's right. It is this is everyone that comes through that roster has performed pretty much. So, there's something to be said for that for sure.
Someone on the Eagles that when you looked at the Pro Bowl roster, did you go, how did that guy not make it? Anybody on the Eagles or around the NFL?
For the Eagles, I would say Javon Hargrave. How do you put up 10 sacks, lead the NFC in defensive tackle votes, not get in? And you look at the impact of those sacks. These had very instrumental sacks throughout the season. And you look no further than last Sunday when a lot of his sacks sort of invigorated the offense and really forced Chicago to give them the football back and really turn the tides in many regards. And that's happened throughout the season. He's come up with timely sacks when the Eagles have really needed some sort of life. And then James Bradberry, man, I think James Bradberry, look, we've seen some really good cornerback play in this city. Look at Troy Vincent, Bobby Taylor, Asante Samuel. There's been some all-timers that have come through here. I think James Bradberry has provided some of the most intelligent cornerback play that I've seen in this city. And to not have him in that game is criminal. He has made Darius Slay's job infinitely easier, and teams are afraid to throw to his side. I mean, his length, his physicality, and just his intelligence on that side makes the Eagles defense in that second level the best in football, puts them over the top.
I looked up James Bradberry's numbers again last night. I do it every week for some. I think it's because I'm still amazed James Bradberry's on this team. And when you look at his numbers, opposing quarterbacks only have a 39.1 passer rating targeting him. He's allowed 1 touchdown, which I think was a 2-yarder, 3 interceptions. He's second in the league in pass breakups. How does a guy like that not make the Pro Bowl? This might be the best season by an Eagles cornerback in our lifetime.
Well, he's quiet, right? I think sometimes that's good, but it also can work against you. He's not he doesn't celebrate big plays. He doesn't go out. He's not going to give you these sound bites throughout the week. He's not flashy. He just goes about his business, and he's more of a product over substance, or substance over the flash, or however you want to say it. And I think he just kind of goes out there every day, doesn't really worry about what's being said, what people think, and performs. And you get different corners. That's very atypical for cornerbacks in the NFL. But I mean, you'd be blind to not see what he's being able to perform, what he's been doing week in and week out this season.
You and I have seen that in the locker room too. Every time we talk to James Bradberry, it's very mild manner, very soft. And then you got Slay, who's right next to him. He's doing all the talking for him.
Yeah, it's two polar opposite personalities. At least Slay is one of the most phenomenal personalities that you're going to find. He's hilarious, and he's all about the team. You saw how excited he was for James Bradberry going into the MetLife Stadium, and how he's all about Josh Sweat getting those sacks. Like, he's a team guy. Bradberry's more like, yeah, we'll see what happens with the contract. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I had a decent game. I read the play this way. He's not going to over elaborate on anything. Doesn't get too high. Doesn't get too low. He's kind of like Jalen Hurts in that way for the defensive side.
Yeah, James Bradberry to me, and again, I did mention this a couple minutes ago, but it does feel like when I look at great seasons by an Eagles cornerback, at least in our lifetime, Eric Allen at 93 stands out. 3 interceptions turned for touchdowns, 5 interceptions over. He might have had more than 5 interceptions if I'm not mistaken, but
I think
yeah. Bobby Taylor and Troy Vincent in 2002, Leo Shepard in 2004, Asante Samuel in 2008.
Sheldon Brown.
Yeah, he's right up there. Darius Slay last year, he's right up there with those guys.
Exactly. That's why it baffles me, Jeff, that he didn't get included in the Pro Bowl selection process because of what he's been able to do. We've seen it week in and week out. He's such a consistent player, and what he means to that second level in being able to take away one side of the field and make Darius Slay's job so much easier. I really thought that it would have been nice to have the cornerback tandem of the Philadelphia Eagles make that game. And, some people say the Pro Bowl doesn't mean anything. Look no further than the Washington Commanders, who put out that video on social media the other day. And Jeremy Reeves, their special teamer, who was a former undrafted free agent of the Eagles in 2018. If you look at his transaction sheet over his career, Jeff, it reads like a CVS receipt about practice squads, release, and everything. And when Ron Rivera told him that he made the team, he broke down. Not only that, Terry McLaurin, when they told him that Reeves made it, he was excited. When they told Tressway that Reeves made it, he was excited and wanted to be there when he told him about it. So this does matter. And a lot of guys, this is their first time going. So, I mean, I thought that Bradberry should have made it. Oh, yeah, you can also make a case for TJ Edwards as well. The numbers might not be there, but the volume and tackles and the impact of that second level, it's undeniable.
I could skew the numbers where TJ Edwards makes it because I still think he's the only player in the league with I think it's 115 tackles and 2 sacks and 2 forced fumbles or something like that. It's kind of insane how he's not. But it's hard to argue when you got guys like Fred Warner making the team.
That's where it becomes tough. But I mean, we've seen the Eagle. We study the Eagles. We're there, and just seeing his impact and growth and development throughout the years. I mean, without TJ Edwards, that defense isn't what it is. I mean, there's so many key components on that defense, but you take TJ Edwards out of there. I mean, that's sort of like the heart and soul of that second level in the middle.
Doesn't it feel like Jeff Stoutland is the actual MVP of the Eagles when you consider everybody on the offensive line is either starting or made the Pro Bowls and alternate?
Yeah, I mean, how about that? He's sort of the unsung hero. I mean, he does get mentioned, but with all the different accolades being poured on the Eagles and the Super Bowl aspirations, sometimes the coaches get lost in the shuffle a little bit. But just his ability in the run game and from the offensive line standpoint, I mean, you can make a case for a lot of people being the MVP for the Eagles based on the way the season's unfolded. But Jeff Stoutland certainly is the best of what he does.
Don't you feel like because the Eagles are so good and because, again, Jalen Hurts have a phenomenal year, and I still don't know I'm voting for MVP yet, by the way, in the PFWA, but don't you feel like it's because the Eagles are good that hurts chances?
To a degree, yeah, because the Eagles really had their season locked up with 3 games left to go. Granted, you still have to win one of the last 3 here, but I think the fact that he was so good, it makes it. And Mahomes he's going to have to play down to the wire, so he's going to have the stats. He is essentially the face of the NFL. You look at the passing yards. I mean, he is the NFL darling right now. The Eagles have just been that team that just steamrolled through teams. And now you have the uncertainty surrounding Jalen Hurts for the next 3 weeks. I think it looks a lot. It makes it a lot easier for the NFL to make their decision. However, Jalen Hurts is the best player on the best team in football. That's cut and dried, simple. You look at the rushing touchdowns; they count, by the way. I mean, it's just I don't know how you could look at anybody else and point to them being the MVP. It's clear to me. It's head and shoulders Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I agree with every point you had. If I had to pick Mahomes, I think I would go by, well, and it's kind of like Jalen Hurts. Would the Eagles be what they are without Jalen Hurts? No, exactly. And I think that's the same with the Chiefs and Mahomes. That's why I think they both have an equal case. And the Chiefs they're number one in a lot of offensive categories, but they also struggled against the Houston Texans. I know some of that's their defense, but I know we're making a big deal about Mahomes going 36-41 against them, but it's not like he did against the Bills here.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's like I said earlier, it just seems like Mahomes, and rightfully so, he has the numbers to back this up. I'm not discrediting that at all.
No, neither am I.
But he is, for all intents and purposes, he's like the face of the NFL. He's been consistent for so long and dominant for so long. I think it makes it easier for them to make the case for him versus someone like Jalen Hurts, who's really emerged in his second year as a full-time starter. Sort of, he's engineered the NFL's top offense. He's the best player on the best team in the NFL. But the next 3 games of the season, it's easy to forget about all the great things that happened in the beginning of the year because the Eagles, I don't want to say they're taking their foot off the gas, but there's a little bit less. It's a low leverage situation down the stretch, and they have less to play for.
Yeah, and then you got Mahomes, where the Chiefs are still playing for home field advantage, even though they got the AFC West locked up. The Bills Bengals, they could cancel each other out, and the Chiefs could leapfrog both of them over the next couple of weeks. So, yeah, I think that's what makes it tough for me. And I always tell this down on Kansas City radio stations. I think it's harder for Patrick Mahomes to win MVP because he is Patrick Mahomes, and you kind of need like the season he's having for him to win MVP. And if he doesn't get it, he may never get it again.
Wow, you think so?
I mean, think about this, right? What if you set the NFL record for passing yards, pass and rush yards? You have the number 1 offense in football in points, yards per play, third down conversions, fourth down conversions. By the way, they're the first team to do this since the greatest show on turf, and you don't win it. When are you going to win it?
Yeah, that's a fair point. And right now, I do think that he has the edge. However, I know who I would vote for, and it's a pretty clear decision for me. I don't think that the decision needs to be made harder than what it is. I think Jalen Hurts has consistently throughout the season been the NFL, the league's most valuable player.
Yeah, I think the only time I get upset when they end an MVP debate, and again, this is from covering the league, when I get Joe Burrow should be MVP or Josh Allen should be MVP, I'm like, over who? Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts? Because that's who you're saying right now. Those are the two. It's clear cut. It's those two. If you want to put odds on Burrow and Allen, fine, but it's either going to be Mahomes or Hurts.
Yeah, and to that, I would say, tell me you're only watching Buffalo Bills and Cincinnati Bengals games without telling me you're only watching that. I mean, there's been Mahomes and Jalen Hurts have provided brilliant quarterback play throughout the year, and neither team is where they are without those guys commanding the offense.
It feels like, too, both of them, they seem to set some record every single week. Like, Jalen Hurts has a 60 passer rating, his lowest of the year, and yet he's still the first player in NFL history to throw for 300 yards, run for 50 yards, and 3 touchdowns in the game.
Yeah, we're witnessing one of these rare seasons, Jeff, and we've had the privilege to see it up close and just see such an evolution of a quarterback. But it's fascinating to see where he could end up and how good he can actually be, because I think he's just scratching the surface of his capability, which is scary to think. I think that there's a lot more to be done for Jalen Hurts. We're really seeing a historic season here.
That's what I get upset about, the whole, oh, it's a one-year wonder thing. I'm like, yeah, I know. I heard that about Josh Allen. I heard that about Patrick Mahomes, and they're still 2 of the best players in the league. Don't you feel like Jalen Hurts is going to be more in the conversation with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow? I think Tua Tagovailoa is getting up there too, even though he's probably not at their level. Don't you feel like, though, it's like the future of the NFL is Mahomes, Herbert, Burrow, Allen, Hurts?
Yeah, and if there's one player you don't want to discount or label a one-year wonder, it's Jalen Hurts. The work ethic for him is off the charts. He put the work in last offseason, and he's seeing the fruits of his labor pay off now. And I think that you're going to see him work even harder this offseason to take a leap in 2023. So, I mean, I think that this is the new age NFL quarterbacks that you just mentioned. That's the young crop of guys that are going to move forward, and they're going to be the face of the NFL.
I want to go around the league here. I guess we'll start with the NFC playoff picture. Do you think all 4 NFC East teams do make it with 3 weeks to go?
Oh, man. Wouldn't that be something? I think a lot of things would have to break right for that to happen. But I think ultimately when the dust settles, I think so. I think it's going to happen.
You think it's going to be all 4? So you don't think Detroit's getting in?
I don't think so.
Where do you think they slip up?
Well,
it's tough, right? Because they have 3 winnable games on their schedule.
I know. I know. It's just the line. I have a hard time envisioning the Lions being able to be disciplined and focusing on their task and taking care of business for the final 3 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I will say this. I don't think they have a chance to make the playoffs, but I think Green Bay's actually been playing their best football all year. I know the competition hasn't been great, but they're still in it.
And you know, AJ Dillon's starting to come alive a little bit, and I think that he's someone that his game really translates to the colder months, right? I think that if Green Bay had been able to take care of business even a little bit earlier in the season, they would put themselves in a decent position to make the playoffs. And that's a team you don't want to see with a 2-headed rushing attack of Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. And of course, you never want to see Aaron Rodgers. He can beat you. It doesn't matter if he's going through a slump or not. There's one of those games where he can just awaken and really carve you up. So, yeah.
So one of the games and again, it just happens to be on the same time as Eagles Cowboys that I want to keep my eye on, but it's going to be hard too. Washington and San Francisco, because I think the 49ers are going to have a test facing this front 4 of Washington here, and mainly Brock Purdy. But does it feel like even though Washington had a bad loss to the Giants last week, this is kind of like a sleeper trap game for San Francisco?
Yeah, it does. And that's actually why I do think that Washington could end up squeaking into the playoffs. I think the Giants can as well. But I think that when you look at it's a recipe for disaster for the Niners. When you look at that defensive line, that ferocious defensive line of Washington going against an inexperienced quarterback in Brock Purdy, they're going to throw things at him, Jeff, that he has not seen before. And sometimes as a young quarterback, you try to make too many plays instead of the ones that are there and available. And you force balls into tight windows, and you put your team in an uncomfortable and unfortunate circumstances. And I don't know that he's really had to face that kind of adversity so far. So I think that could be a sleeper team to watch, sleeper game to watch. And I think that could be an upset.
Another game too in the NFC East, the Giants and the Vikings. I don't know, Andrew. It's hard for me to pick the Giants this weekend just because they did have their big win. And I know they probably only have to win one of their final 3 to get in, because that would give them 9. Do you see them potentially upsetting Minnesota this weekend?
Well, yeah, I think it. I think if this year's NFL has shown us anything, it's to expect the unexpected. And you have a Minnesota team who has been very turbulent, throughout the year. You don't really know, Jekyll and Hyde. You don't really know which one's going to show up. And if the Giants play a ball control style of game, it could happen. You don't know which Minnesota team's going to show up. You don't know which Kirk Cousins is going to show up. So it wouldn't surprise me, but I have a tough time seeing it. I think Minnesota is probably going to pull that one off.
Yeah, then the Giants, they finish with, obviously, Indianapolis and the Eagles. By the way, shout out to Nick Foles, starting quarterback at the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah. It only took this long to get him in there. He should have been in there weeks ago.
Honestly, he probably should have been in there when Frank Reich was still coaching.
I think so, too. I think that during those last couple of weeks where Reich was there, I thought that he should have been the guy. And who knows, Frank may have wanted him ultimately to be the guy, and he was sort of forced Sam Ehlinger. So totally messy season over there in Indianapolis.
Why do you think it takes these teams, the Chicago Bears, the St. Louis LA Rams, the Indianapolis Colts, so long to play a guy who's clearly more accomplished than the guys that he's competing with on the roster?
Well, it's interesting because I think there's a lot of outside variables. I think you get a lot of voices. I want this guy. I drafted this guy. Whatever. They want to see the young guy. They want to sort of, because you have other people that are trying to hold on to their jobs too. If Ehlinger looked good or he showed promise, then you can make a case that different guys can hold on to their jobs. Because, oh, yeah, we have a young quarterback, just hang in there. We're developing them over the offseason. We're going to build around them, whatever. And I think just in a lot of cases, guys vie to play their guys. They pound the table to play their guys versus what the coach necessarily wants to do. So I think right now it's clear as day, clear as day that Nick Foles is the best option, and that's why you're seeing it. But I just think there's there's a lot more than just the head coach deciding on who he's going to play. I think there's a lot of outside variables.
Yeah, we talked about Javon Hargrave, and for some reason this question slipped my mind earlier, but Javon Hargrave doesn't make the Pro Bowl.
Right.
How did Aaron Donald make it?
Reputation.
See, that's why I don't like the Pro Bowl.
Yeah. And name alone. He made it on reputation and name alone. Now, I thought it was really interesting to see someone like Landon Dickerson make it, which was great to see because he has been playing good football, but he's just a second-year player that doesn't have the name. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, it really does, right? Because I mean, you and I, we probably go on Pro Football Focus, True Media, everything we need to do to look up their stats. But if you're watching game film of him too, you're like, wait, the Eagles got this guy in the second round. How is that possible?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's insane.
It's
insane to think about because he is so athletic, he is so strong, and he plays the game nasty. He's an old school throwback player that just gets after it in the pass game and the run game. He continues to get better. And I think that you have a building block there at guard, and he just plays such a physical brand of football that it's really fun to watch when he gets rolling.
Tone DeShields brought this up to me. It was a week or two ago. I thought it was an interesting question we had on the show. If Jalen Hurts wins MVP, is he by far Howie Roseman's best draft pick?
I think he has to be, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you could say Jordan Mailata, but when you take a flyer on somebody based on traits, that's a dart throw. You don't get credit for that. You got to talk about the first and second round, and I think that's really where you build your rosters by and large. So I think I would think taking a quarterback in the second round who gets MVP and has you in position to win the Super Bowl in his second year as a starter, yeah, that's a definitive yes from me.
What's crazy is when I was looking up MVP numbers and stuff, in case Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes wins it, no second-round pick has ever been selected as MVP, as a quarterback.
And I also think that it's interesting you bring that up. I think that's also a deterrent or something that sort of clouds the judgment and the picture or the pathway to Jalen Hurts becoming MVP. Sometimes if you're not a first-round darling quarterback, you get this stigma, he's a second-rounder. And you sort of discredit or you're slow, you're hesitant to point them or validate what they've done, if that makes sense. I think that it's easier to say, oh, he was a first round quarterback. He was viewed as clearly the best player or one of the best players in that draft class. So I think that having a quarterback in the second round, that's also sometimes can be a deterrent, as silly as that sounds.
It is silly, honestly. Think about this. Russell Wilson probably should have been picked as an MVP, or at least gotten a vote at this point in his career.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's never gotten one because he was a 3rd-round pick. I don't think people like to admit they're wrong. Like, Joe Burrow has been everything you thought. Tua Tagovailoa is becoming that. Justin Herbert is setting records left and right. The Chargers are nowhere near where they are without Justin Herbert. And then you got Jalen Hurts, who was, the 5th quarterback taken in that draft? I think Jordan Love was taken before him.
He was. Jordan Love was taken before him.
Yeah. So, okay, so he's the 5th quarterback taken in the draft. I just don't think people want to admit, how did we get this wrong?
Yeah, I mean, even before the draft, he was, how there's always players that rise up draft boards. Well, I wrote an article of 4 players. I remember that year, and Jalen Hurts was one of the players that I said that I thought was going to go into the back end of the 1st round. To it seemed like the New England Patriots. He's a classic player for the Patriots in his demeanor and the way that he goes about his business, and the Saints. I really saw the ability in him. I thought that he was raw in some areas. He needed to develop, but I saw 1st-round ability in him. So I think that a lot of teams, they sort of have egg on your face because you bypass this guy who's all of a sudden in the, a front runner in the MVP race and has his team in the driver's seat of, attaining the Super Bowl. So I think that there's a lot of teams that are a little bit, it makes them look a little foolish for getting that one wrong.
Let's redo the 2020 draft here with the quarterbacks. Where do you pick Jalen Hurts now?
Ooh. Well, now I'm trying to think. Do I put him over Tua? Yeah, you do. Yeah.
I think you do. But do you take him over Herbert? Do you take him over?
No.
And Burrow, you don't take him over Burrow?
No, I think he's the 3rd quarterback taken.
Yeah. So if we would redo the draft, you would say if the Dolphins are up. Well, actually, no, the Dolphins picked Tua over Herbert. So, yeah, so I guess if the Chargers are up, assuming the Dolphins do the right thing this time and take Herbert.
If I had to do the ranking, I would do Herbert, Burrow, Hurts, Tua.
Why do you think Herbert doesn't get the love he should be getting?
Because if you remember going into the draft, and I think so many people want to get this opinion right, he was known as somebody that his skill set wasn't going to translate. There were countless articles, countless people, pundits making comments that coming from Oregon, he was going to be another Mariota. His skill set wasn't going to translate. He couldn't do this. He couldn't do that. He wasn't a good leader. He was too lackadaisical and aloof. And they were clearly wrong. I mean, they were saying, is he better than Jordan Love? I saw these different takes throughout the draft process that year. I remember it. And I think that it's a case of, even though he's doing it, they're waiting for the downfall. They're waiting for see, I told you. He's careless with the football, or hey, he's not taking that next step, or he's not this, he's not that. When you have to see what's right in front of you, and what's right in front of you is a quarterback that's going to be one of the faces of the NFL and for the foreseeable future, the next decade plus.
Before I let you go, don't you think it's ironic how Shane Steichen has worked with 2 of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league?
Yeah, and I think that certainly bolsters his resume there as he's potentially eyeing a head coaching job. I think he's going to be one of the top candidates in the offseason.
Yeah, I honestly, if I had to pick between the Eagles coordinators, no disrespect to John Fagan, I would take Shane Steichen in a heartbeat just because of what Herbert's told me over the years about him and what Jalen Hurts tells you now.
Yeah, and I think you look at his consistency and his evolution and what he's made the Eagles an offensive juggernaut, and the ability to not only just play one style, Jeff, to play no matter however teams want to defend him, he's had an answer to counter that. And he just is an offensive mastermind right now. And he's able to, he's orchestrating. His fingerprints are all over the NFL's top offense or the most efficient offense. So I would say, yeah, he's a front runner.
Andrew, once again, my friend, I appreciate you coming on Good Morning NFC East. I'm going to have to get you on again. Maybe next week, maybe after the Saints game, we'll do some playoff previewing here.
Sure thing, man. Yeah, I'll see you soon. Happy holidays to you and your family and all your listeners.
Yep, happy holidays to you and your family too, Andrew. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
You bet, man.
Okay. And Tone, I guess we'll wrap up the show really quick then. I got to pay a tribute to a Philadelphia sports legend. Actually, not even a Philadelphia sports legend, a Philadelphia legend. We come back after the break.